Welcome to The Explainer. So today, we're jumping into a really powerful sermon. It's about a community reeling from a catastrophic hurricane, but instead of just offering easy comfort, it takes us somewhere totally unexpected, deep into an ancient prophet's crisis of faith. Right from the get-go, the sermon doesn't pull any punches. It drops us right into this raw, present-day reality. We're talking about a community just devastated by a natural disaster. People have lost everything, they're sleeping outside, and they're just filled with this overwhelming fear. And out of all that pain, this one single question bubbles to the surface. It's the most basic human question, right? The one we all ask after something terrible happens. Why? Seriously, why would a God who is supposed to be loving and all-powerful let this happen? So what's the answer? Well, the speaker doesn't give us some simple, tidy explanation. Nope. Instead, they take a hard left turn and point us to a pretty surprising place for answers. A 2,600-year-old book from a prophet named Habakkuk. And this is the whole idea right here. The point is, we're not the first people to feel this way, not by a long shot. Our pain, right now, has this ancient echo. The sermon's basically saying, hey, let's look at this guy Habakkuk's story, because maybe, just maybe, we can find a way through our own struggles by looking at his. All right, so let's meet this guy, Habakkuk. The sermon paints this picture of him, and he's not some holy figure in a stained glass window. Not at all. He's portrayed as this really frustrated person, someone who is basically shaking his fist at the sky, demanding answers from God. So this is his first big complaint. He's looking around at his own country, Judah, and he sees all this injustice, all this corruption, all this evil, and he just unloads on God. He's basically accusing God of being silent, of just sitting there, doing nothing. You can almost hear him screaming, why aren't you doing anything about this? But then, God actually answers him, and let me tell you, it is not the answer Habakkuk was hoping for. Not even close. In fact, it's really disturbing. It's an answer that seems to make a bad situation 1,000,000 times worse. Okay, look at this. This is where things really escalate. God's grand plan, his solution, he's going to use the Babylonians, this notoriously brutal, wicked empire, to be his instrument of justice. The sermon really leans into Habakkuk's complete and utter outrage here. Like, how on earth can a good God use an even more evil nation to punish his own people? It just makes no sense. And that leads to Habakkuk's second complaint. And this one is even more desperate. He's not just questioning what God is doing anymore. Now he's questioning who God is. He's challenging God's very nature, his moral character. This is getting serious. So, according to the sermon, this is the pivot, the absolute turning point of the whole story. In the middle of this heated, emotional argument with God, Habakkuk has this aha moment. He suddenly realizes he's gone too far. He's crossed a line. And what he does next just perfectly illustrates this huge change in his attitude. He stops shouting, he stops demanding. Instead, he climbs up into a watchtower. Why? To wait, to listen. And get this, he's fully expecting to be told he's wrong, to be reproved. He completely flips from demanding to just being ready to receive. And the sermon argues that this is the key. This shift from arguing to listening, that's how you get through a crisis of faith. It's the difference between, telling God you're hurting and putting God on trial for causing your pain. Okay, so this new sense of humility, this willingness to listen, it leads Habakkuk to this really famous prayer. And this prayer is the absolute heart of the sermon's message about how we can endure suffering. So the sermon breaks this prayer down into this really powerful kind of 3-step process. First, you got to be brutally honest. You have to acknowledge everything you've lost. The fig tree isn't blooming, there are no grapes on the vines, everything is gone. Then, step 2, you make a conscious choice, a decision. You say, I'm still going to rejoice, but not in my situation, but in God himself. And finally, step 3, you pinpoint where your strength really comes from. Not from your stuff, not from your circumstances, but from God. And it all gets summed up in this one incredible line from the speaker. The whole point is that your faith isn't supposed to be attached to the blessings. It's supposed to be attached to the one giving the blessings. The idea is if you're connected to the source, you can handle losing the resources. So where does this all land? Well, the whole thing wraps up with this one last really powerful metaphor that shows you exactly what this kind of tough, rugged faith looks like when you're right in the middle of a total disaster.
The sermon closes with this amazing image right from the text. Habakkuk says God will make his feet like hinds' feet. So what does that mean? Think about a mountain goat. It can stand, perfectly balanced and totally secure, on the smallest, most dangerous rocky ledge you can imagine. The point isn't that God pulls you off the dangerous cliff, it's that he gives you the ability to stand your ground right in the middle of it.
And really, that's the big takeaway. This isn't a promise that you'll get to escape the hard stuff. Not at all. It's a roadmap for finding your footing and staying stable when you're right in the eye of the storm.
So, Habakkuk's incredible journey from being full of rage to being repentant to finally rejoicing, it gives us one profound answer to that big question. It suggests that real faith isn't about getting a free pass from trouble. It's about getting the strength to stand firm. And it's pretty amazing, isn't it, that a 2,600-year-old story about doubt can still show us so much about being resilient today?